Ever wanted to understand how many new customers, users, or leads returned and how many are still returning? Well, cohort analysis can do just that. And this is why it's such a powerful tool to have in your analytical toolbox. So let me show you how you can do it in Power BI. So if you want to follow along, I have the dataset and the code for the date table that I'm going to be using in the description below. The first thing you want to do is load in the sales data. So to load in the sales data set, all you need to do is go to Excel workbook. It will then come up with the browser, which will then allow you to select the file, and then you can load that in. And then for the date table, all you need to do is go to get data, or in this case, in the transform data blank query under new source, and then just open up the notepad, go to advanced editor and paste in the query. And then it will look like this. And then all you have to do is just click done. And then you have your date table. And the best thing to do is call it under the name dim_date table. Now you have your fact sales table and your dim date table set up. All you need to do is take a copy by referencing your dim date table like this, and then calling this one dim_first order date, and then go to your fact sales data that you've loaded in, and then do right click, reference, and then change this one to fact customer_order, because what we're going to do is do all the transformations in Power Query. And the important thing when using this type of analysis, and especially anything that's going to be doing a lot of processing or any calculations, you can do it in DAX, but because DAX works on the level, calculates it, and every time you keep going through, refreshing the table, anything like that, it's always going to keep recalculating and recalculating. So the best thing to do whenever you're dealing with anything that could get larger, this could cope with it because it's not a massive table, but in most cases, if you're dealing with years and years of sales data, interaction data, web lead data, anything like that, it's gonna get too big and it's going to take a lot of time. So the best thing to always do is work downstream to get everything in place what you want. And then you can use DAX to just do very simple measures to get the information you need instead. You're just doing all the complicated transformation in Power Query, and it will make everything run a lot smoother and a lot quicker for the end user. So now we have our fact customer order table. What you want to do is group the table so you are only looking at the data that relates to the order. So you've got the order dates, the order number here, and the reason being is, as you can see with this particular case here, is there was an order that was created, and 7. Yeah, so 7 lines. So it's got 7 items in this particular order. And because we're going to be looking at new and repeat, we want to be able to look at the customer and just the order. We don't want to have extra ones because we want to be able to create a sequence of orders to understand the time it takes to get to each particular order. So if you go up to transform, and then under here, you go to group by, then click on advanced. And then what you want to do is add in a few extra ones. For now, what we're going to need is we want to use the customer ID as our main one. And then we're going to want order ID, order date, region, so we can actually filter by region. It's not necessary to do it for this, but if say you wanted to filter by the regions and see what's happened, you can do it that way. And let's just add in state as well. So now these are what going to be grouping your data by. And now we're going to add in whatever summaries of data we're going to have. So in this case, we want to add in the count of rows, which will be, like we noticed, the number of items in order. And then if we add the sales amount, so if we go sum, and then we go to sales, which is down here, and then we call that sales. And then we want to include profit as well. So let's do sum, bring that up a bit. There we go. And profit. So now we've got a simplified table. It is now looking at the customer grouped by with the order date, the region, and the state. And then we can see how many actual rows there were in each order, because that gives you the number of items that were included in that particular order, like the one we were looking at before, which would be this one. You can see it's got 7, and this is the sales amount totaling of that order, and this is the profit amount totaling that order. So now we have that done. What we want to do is just sort these into an order of customer ascending with customer ID ascending, and then after that, order by order date. so we can see customers in order by their order date. So if we go customer ID ascending, click on order date, sort ascending, we can now see customer here has had 5 orders that have ranged from 2014 all the way to 2017. And now what we want to do is basically add in these 2 dates here. So we want to know the first order date of every single customer here, and then what their last order date is as well. And then also, because we know how many I got here, we would like to know how many orders has that customer actually made in that whole period as well. So again, all we have to do is go up to transform and then go group by again. This time we only want to use customer ID, and then we want to go min order date, and we call this one first order date. Almost forgot to click advanced, and then we do another one, and then we're going to do the same, but this time max. So if we go order date, and then we do last order date, and then number of orders by counting the rows, because we're doing it by the customer ID, so it's going to count the number of rows for each customer and then give us that. And then also what we want to be able to do is create that group, but then we want to be able to expand it again afterwards, so then we can see all this information, and then all it's doing is just giving us those extra columns. Because if I didn't do that, so if we go delete and do it like this, we only have this information. But what we want is the whole table, but with that extra bit stuck on the end. So how you do that is, if you reopen it again, add an aggregation, and then in here you have this thing called all rows. And what all rows does is it just creates an extra column on the side that you can expand, that then gives you all the data. So if we just call this all rows for now, and then do OK. So now we have this table. You can see we have under each one the lines that relate to those particular customers. And if we just expand by removing that, and then because we've already got customer ID, we don't want it again, so we can just remove customer ID, and we bring in all the other data. If we do OK, we now have all that information that we had previous here, just with the addition of first order date, last order date, and number of orders. So now how do we get that order sequence that I was just talking about? Well, all we have to do is go back to our transform again and then do group by, and this time all we want is basically what we got here. We want the customer ID, and then we just want to do count of rows. We want the customer ID, we'll just keep the column name as it is, and then we want to do all rows. So we just get a table which gives us customer ID and then a column that is basically broken out by the count of the customers. As you can see here, we have the customer ID. We click on the table, we can see all the data. So now we want to be able to sit in here on the basis of what their order is, because you can see here, this is all in order. We want that to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that will give us our order sequence. So how you do that is, before you do anything with this, don't expand it or anything. We just want to add a new column by going up to new column and doing custom column. Don't want to call it anything because we're not going to keep the name. We're just going to use this just purely to create that actual order sequence. All you have to do is use table add index column. There it is there. So when you're typing M code, don't worry about the full stops and everything here, because it says it here. The only way it pulls through is if you actually just keep typing whatever it is, don't do any spaces, and then you get it pop up. This is what we want, because basically we're adding in an index column. Then we want to do an open bracket, and then we want to use our count, and then we want to then give it a name, and I'm going to call this order sequence or seek, and then we want to do it by a starting point of 1. And then we add a comma and then do 1. And then if we save that as OK, we now have an additional table on top of that that says custom. If we click on it, you can see, if we go to the other one I was just looking at then, that we now have this extra column that says order sequence. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and all the way up to 9. So we know that's working. We can see that's working. So all we need to do now is click on this one, remove other columns. So right click and then go remove other columns. Now you have this one column, we can just expand it. We don't expand all because we don't have any data. Everything under those tables are going to be put in. So we just do OK. And we now have our order sequences for each of the customers and their orders. And now we have that order sequence. We can actually use that to find out how long it took to get to that particular order from the previous order. So what we're going to do is, how long did it take from the first order to get to the second order, and so on and so forth. And to do that, all we want to do is merge based on what the order sequence is and the customer ID. So what we want to do is basically take this and reverse by 1. So if we go custom column up here on add column, and if we just call this previous order seek, and then all we're going to do is just find the order sequence, and then we're just going to do -1. And then we just do OK. And now we have -1 of that order sequence. So what will happen now is when we do a merge using the same table, using this and the customer ID, it will then go from here, what was the order date, and then pin it on. So we can then do the difference between the order date here and the previous order date to get the number of days, weeks, months, whatever you want to do to get to the next order. So basically days to repeat. So to do that, we go to home and then we go merge queries. Then under here, we want to select fact, customer, order, current, because we're using the same table. We're just going to do a merge with using exactly the same table. We don't have to create another one to do this. You can do it all within it. And then we're going to select customer ID and customer ID. And then over here, we're going to use previous order sequence and then click on control and there. So then it adds it as an extra one. And then for the bottom one, we're going to use order sequence. So again, need to click on customer ID first and then hold down control and select order sequence. So it's doing it in that order. So it's using the customer ID and the order sequence and then merge together. Then if we do OK, we can now look under here and we can see there's no previous one there, so it's blank. But if we click on this one, we'll see this line here. So for order date, you've got 31st of March 2014, and then order date 31st of March 2014, and it will add that date in there. So if we were to go here and then unselect all and then just do order date, we can do OK, and then we get the order date. However, we don't, because if we were to do customer ascending and then order date ascending, you'll notice that the sequences are all over the place. And the reason is Power Query remembers its previous, when you set it up first time, sort order. So even though we've done a sort up here and had it in that order all the time, as soon as we try and apply this, it reverts back to what it originally was. So what you have to do is add in a bit of mQuery that will hard code your sorting in place, so then this will actually work. So if we was to just go back a step and go back to our merge queries, before this point, if we were to add in the table buffer that will hard code in the sorting, just here we go right click and then go insert step after, do insert, and then up here you'll see the step. And what this is doing, this is referencing what the last step was. So that's all it's giving you. It's just giving you the name of merge queries like that. And the reason why you have the hash and then the 2 quotation marks is because there's a space. If there wasn't a space between merge and queries, then it would just be one word. A bit like if I show you source, here it does the same thing because it's referencing fact underscore sales. But if there was a space between fact and sales, then it would do exactly the same. It will be hash and then in quotation marks fact sales. And because that, all we want to do is then put in Table.Buffer within there. So we just put the step merge queries within open and close brackets like so. And then we just want to type in here Table.Buffer. So if we write Table.Buffer, as we can see here, and then if we do return, and then if we do expand now, and now that's loaded up, we can see we now have our sort still in place. I haven't added an additional sort here. We can still see it here. And obviously with this top one, we know that one was the 31st of March 2014. If we come across, we see it here, 31st of March 2014. The next one needs to be the 15th of September 2014, 15th of September 2014, so on and so forth. And then obviously the last one will be the previous one, which is the 3rd of March 2016. So now we know that's working. What we want to do is just change this name because we want to call this previous order date. To do it up here, you could just change the name here, but you can actually do it here to save you adding additional steps. So we just remove that .1, and the reason why I added .1 because order date already exists. So if we just do previous, as you can see, there's no actual data type set ever since we did the merge. Well, actually in most of the grouping, ungrouping, it kept kicking out the data types at the top here. But a nice quick and easy way to get around this is if you just highlight the first one, scroll to the end, hold down shift, click on all, and then up under transform, there's detect data types, click on that. And now all columns have the data types. We actually don't need that previous order sequence number anymore. So we can just remove it, right click, and then go remove. So now that's done, what we want to do is do the days between previous order date and order date, also the number of weeks and number of months. And then the key one that we're going to need for the actual cohort analysis is then looking at the first order date to the order date. So how long does it take? Obviously the first one is always going to be 0, and that's always going to be when someone's new, and then everybody else after that would be seen as a repeat when they have more than one. And then it's the days between that particular date to there, that particular date to there, that particular date to there. And then you can see how often do they actually return. So to add in days, which is what you want to use as your starting point, especially when you're going to divide it by 7 to get weeks, is if we go up to add column and then do custom column. So now that's loaded up. What we want to do is create this one, call it days to repeat. Now we want to be able to look at the days between the order date and the previous order date. So all you have to do is type in days, and then we get duration days down here. Select that one. And what that's going to do is convert the dates and the days between it into actual numbers. So you don't have to worry about converting the date to a number and then taking away to then be able to get you the number of days. You can use duration.days to get you that. And then we do an open bracket, and then we want to use what is the later date, which will be the order date, and then minus the previous order date, which is down here. And then we do a close bracket, and if we do okay, so now we have our days to repeat there. What we want to do is now give that a data type. You can right click on anything like that if we wanted to, but just to save the extra step, if you go in after that close bracket, after the previous order date, add a comma, and then type in int64.type, which is that one there. That will now convert it to a whole number. Now we have our days to repeat. We want to do exactly the same with the days to repeat since first order. So we want to do an add custom column again. So for this one, we want to call this days to repeat with a capital R since first order. And again, if we type days, you'll get the option of duration days down here, open bracket, and then order date minus first order date. Then close bracket, and then do okay. And again, let's change this to a whole number. And so now we can see these are the days that it took to repeat from each order. And then this is from the first order date. So this will be the same. And then that will be that plus that, that plus that, and that plus that. That will then give you sort of your running total of days first to last order, really, because that means that's from the first order, it was 0. And then to the last one, it was 1,186 days. But in that on a table will be quite large, and it's such a wide gap. So what we want to do is now try it with weeks. So let's add in a new custom column. So now we want to do weeks to repeat since first order. And then all we're going to take is our new one here, which is our days. And then we're just going to divide it by 7. Simple as that. Now for this one, because it's now going to create decimal places, you don't want to convert it to a whole number yet, because if you do, and it hasn't been set to decimal places first, it will error when you try and load the data. So if you ever find when you create a column, and then you go to load the data, and then it comes back loads of blanks, or you get loads of error messages, that is why. So in this case, instead of doing int64 as the type, we just want to do type number. And then all that will give us is our decimal places for each of the weeks. And as you can see, we've got our decimal places. We can convert that to a whole number once we've done the months. So let's jump over to doing months to repeat since first order. So we add in another custom column. Because this is not just as simple as doing divide by 7 for weeks, because there are 7 days in a week, there isn't an exact amount days in a month. So we have to do a bit of a workaround within the M code to then give us what the months are. So we're going to break down by year, give us the months, times by the number of months in a year, and then we take away to then give us what the actual months are. So we make up for the fact that you have months with different amount of days in them. So how we do this is just do months to repeat since first order. And then if I copy in the code, I can explain what we're doing here. We are taking the order date and taking the year of the order date, minusing by the year of the first order date, and then we're putting that in brackets, and then we're timesing that by 12, and then we're adding the month of the order date minus the month of the first order date. And then this will give us the months since first order. So if I do OK, and the great thing about this particular formula is, as you can see, we don't have decimal places. So we can just convert both of these now into whole numbers. So if you highlight both, press shift, right click, go change type, and then do whole number. And as you can see, we now have our whole numbers. And now we have all our data. We can go up to home, and now we can do close and apply. This is going to take a while. So what I'm going to do, stop the video now, and then come back once it's finished. Okay, now we have the table loaded in. We can just check it to see we have the data, and we can see we've got numbers in here. And if we just click on this to see, we've got numbers there and we've got numbers there. So we know we have got the data pulling through. There isn't any errors that are giving us any blanks. These are going to be blanks because there isn't any previous order, because this is order sequence 1. So we've got that table, and then also we got first order date table here as well. What we want to do is now connect this new table that we put in here to the date table and the first order date table. So to do that, we go over to the model view, and then just to make things nice and clean, let's just go to new layout down here by clicking the plus button, and then we just drag in the tables that we want. So we got the customer order, first order, and dim date. And then all we want to do is get the order date off the fact customer order, and then assign that to the date table, so the dim date table date. And then that means that this table will now use the order date to give you when the order happened in the date. But for the cohort analysis and how we're going to put it in the table, we want to be able to use the first order date. So we're going to apply that to the date on the dim underscore first order date. Now, normally you can keep putting in extra dates into the same date table, and then you can use user relationship to be able to assign what you want the particular type of measure to do. And in this case, what I'm going to do is create an extra table as well, another cohort view. It's going to be using years. You can see the year of first purchase, and then the years of when they actually purchased again. So you can see how it's repeated, and how much of, say, the last year of whatever year you're looking at is going to then give you what the breakout is of the percentage of people who previously purchased in that first year. So in this data set, you've got 2015 to 2017, I think, or it might be 2014, 2017. But so then that will give you people who bought first in 2014, how many times did they buy again of that cohort over 2014, which would be 100% because that's when they first purchased, and then 2015, 2016, 2017, see the percentage of how much returned. So that's why you want to have the two different tables. So now we have that, we just want to add a matrix, and a matrix then will allow us to then break down from like year to month. And what we're going to do is go into first order date, and then we want to come down to year. And if we click on year, we can see it's general, and that means it's going to come through with decimal places. So if we just drop this in, you'll see what I mean. You can see that. So what we want to do is just do whole number, and then that converts it back to that. And this goes all up to 2024 because that's the year now, but it will set to the date of the data you have. So it will remove any years that don't actually include any of the data. So now we can drop in the month short. So we put that one in there, and then you can use these two arrow things here to expand, and then that gives us our months, but the months are now being alphabetical. So the way to fix that is if you click on the month short here, and then if you go by sort by columns, and then we want to sort by month because that's the number, that will then fix the problem going that way. It's going from the last date to the first date. So we're going from 2014 down to 2017 when actually we want to work from 2014 going up to 2017. So you see in the latest data, if we click on that twice, we now get all the way up here. Like I say, we're still pulling through these because we haven't put any additional data in it yet. But once we drop in our next bit of data, which is going to be the measure of unique customers. So if we drop that in, the values, let's expand this. You can see it's now went to 2017 October because that's the cutoff of the data set. It's removed all the other blanks, so you don't have to worry about years and months that don't exist any data showing up. So how this particular measure has been created is if we make this a bit bigger, make it a bit easier to see, and let's just open this out a bit. All I've done is call it number of unique customers, and then all we're doing is a distinct count on the customer ID. And the reason for doing a distinct count is that because the customer has multiple orders, you don't want to do an actual by rows. You just want to be able to go that customer number, how many times that customer, no matter how many times they show up in the data, you only want to count them once. So by that ID, all you want to do is count it once. That's why I use distinct count. That customer only shows up once, but that means once you start adding in the groups across the top for the cohort, in this case, we're going to do like months to repeat since first order, that will then give you the number of those customers again. So how we do that is we move this out of the way slightly, make it a bit smaller, and then if we bring this across like that, if we copy and then just drop that there, and then if we just do this here, and then with this we now have all our unique customers, and then we want to be able to get months to repeat since first order, which is down here. If we drop that into the columns and now we drop this in, it should work, and it's not, and it's because I've left this filter over here. Silly me. There we go. So if I remove that filter, now you see it working. So that's how the layout should look. As you can see, if we look at an example here, we want to make this level, make it a little bit easier. If we come here, in December, you had 1, none of them repeated. In November, 6 purchased. In 2016, and then none of those 6 repeated in the first month. For the second month they did, and there's repeat, and then actually 2 did later on as well. Even though you're seeing 111, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the same customer. It just means that there is a customer in there that repeated at this point. So this could be technically one of the customers of the 6, another customer of the 6, another customer of 6, or it could be the same customer of there would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 orders, and then 6, 7, and then another one come in, and that would be their 1, 2, 2, 3 orders to then come in. And the way you can find out that information is if we dropped in the order sequence into the columns, and if we look at November, we can actually see that in the first month, even though you had people who repeated, because it's all within the first month, so it's the 0, those actually repeated multiple times. They could have been the same day. So with the order sequence, that actually shows you that people did repeat, but not necessarily within a time period, because you're seeing that actually all 6 that purchased once, they purchased again, and then half of those purchased again, and then only 1 of those then purchased for a 4th time. And that means if we end up going back up on our, let's go to here, columns, and then if we go down again to what is our months to repeat, all that's telling you is when the customers repeated in the month. But it's most likely that those customers have probably maybe done multiple orders in the same day, or within less than half of a month, because otherwise it would roll up into 1. That's where maybe month might not be always useful. We could do weeks. We got weeks. So if we add weeks now, let's have a look. Weeks to repeat since first order. This one. So if we drop that over the order sequence, and then if we go drill up, we can now see weeks to repeat. And again, it's still showing as 0, which means it's probably less than a week these people actually repeated. As you can see, you can get different views to look at different ways, and this gets too messy. As we can see here, it's a lot of data. So sometimes it's best to sort of understand what is sort of your expected repeat of whatever data you're looking at. You might have people who are coming back and they've got a subscription. So is it a monthly subscription? Is it a yearly subscription? Is it people returning to a website? How many times are they coming back? Is it people purchasing stuff that normally you can buy every 3 months? Or is it something that people like to repurchase every couple of weeks? It all depends on what your data is, and this is how you can get different views of what you want to look at. What you could do is create a group that can then look at same day, so you can see how many of the same days have repeated. So you have, here's all your customers, those 6 in November that done it, how many then ordered again same day, and then after that how many days too, and then you can do weeks. So you can do maybe up to 14 days. So 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, all the way up to 14. And then everything is plus of. So you can do like from 2 weeks, so 14 days to 28 days, and then so on and so forth. And you can do it like that. So there's many different ways you can kind of play around and group them to be able to get the same sort of output, because all you have to do is just apply it there, just find out what works for you. But as we've not got weeks, it's looking great. Let's just go with the order sequence for now. And you can see the numbers, but what you'd like to see is maybe what the percentages is. And the easy way to do this is if you come over to the values where you got the number, you can actually click on this little down arrow and then go show value as. And then if you do percentage of row total, it then gives you the percentage of the orders that come back. So people who are always done their first order, it's always going to be 100%. The second order, how many of them come back? And we can see there's quite a lot that say 100%, 100%. That one was reduced by some amount, but then it shows here there was 44. So then you can still got the number there to be able to work out what the percentage relates to. And that's why it's good having this extra table to the side, because then you can see what the numbers are that relate to it. Because as you can see, this is only 4. So then you know that was 3, that was 2, that was 1, that was 1, and then none. And then you can apply conditional formatting, but just be aware that when you do apply the conditional formatting, it's going to give you it by the number, not the percentage. So if we were to just add in background color, as you can see here, and then if we removed don't format zeros, do that, make that a light red, make that a light orange, and make that a light green, and do okay. Even though these are 100%, you can see they're red. It's because the majority of the sales happened in the first year, and therefore that's where the majority of the conditional formatting is going to be highlighting as green. But you can then see, okay, we know this period had more, this one's not so much, and then you can just understand how many are actually repeating over that period of time, and then actually see how many people have actually continued to buy. So a good example here is it maxes out with June 2014 with 17, and if someone else, whoever is in that one there, I don't know if it's just one person, it could be, it probably is one person because it's 49, that then if they purchased again, then this would push it out to 18, and so on and so forth. So as this data is now cut off at, was it October 2017, it's not going to grow anymore. But if you have your live data, it would. And the great thing is, you're not just limited to just looking at the number that is here. Yes, that can tell you on the repeats, but you might be going, yeah, look at that. You got loads of people repeating. It's great, it's great, it's great. But are those repeats actually bringing in more revenue or profit? Or are they actually ordering more items when they do an order? And this is where you can then add in other metrics to be able to give you the same view, but look at different types to be able to see, is this actually a positive note? Because if you've suddenly got all these people repeating and they're not bringing in profit, then they're not going to be much help, because that's not going to be good for the business. So let's just take ATV, so average transaction value, as an example. All average transaction value is you're taking your sales amount and then you're giving it as an average. So it's looking at, because it's order based and not item based, it's not going to give you it by item. It's going to give you the total order amount, and then it's going to look at all the orders and then give you it for all the orders for that person who has ordered that first time in those years and months. So if we were just to drop in ATV under this table for now, so we can have a look at it as a total. So if we drop this in after unique customers, and let's just rename it to ATV, we can now see the average transaction value, and it looks like in the later years it's got a lot higher around here, but it's quite low here, but you only had one person buy. So that's why the average transaction value is quite high, because this is quite a mix. What we can do is now, if we remove that one from this table, we can now drop in our average transaction value in here, and now we can see the average transaction value. And because it's a number, we can go into our cell elements, put the conditional formatting in, and then we can do middle color, and then we do a light red, a light orange, light green, and remove don't format, and then we can see which ones are showing up with the most. So a good example here is, we got up here, there were 4 customers in May 2016. The average transaction value when they first purchased of those 4 people worked out to 3,223. So that's 4 times that would then give you what the sales amount would be, because technically the number of orders would be the same there, because this is first order. And then the second order average transaction value come to that, and then that. So actually the average transaction value dropped off, but then that depends on how many people bought. But if it's only one person buying, maybe there was a person who bought something that was super expensive, and then that person then maybe bought again or didn't buy, and then someone's kind of expensive as well, and then those stopped buying, and then there might have been 1 or 2 under there that actually all they ever bought was just small items, and they're the only ones who ended up repeating. So actually your big ticket item buyers probably didn't continue purchasing, but your smaller ticket items are being purchased. And how can we see how many sort of items are being bought within those? We can then go with the average number of items, because you remember when we created that in the table before, it gave you within that particular order how many items are in it based on the count of lines. not the quantity, but the actual count of lines. And this one is basically just doing an average of that column number that we put in. And then all I've done is set it to 1 decimal place. So if we replace ATV, or we can put it over the top because you can actually look at them side by side, but it doesn't look too pretty. So if we remove that, so then we can look at May 2016, and then we can see that was the average number of items in the first order. That was the average number of items in the second order, where there were the higher amounts, and then they dropped off. And then these are quite small. So these have got like higher amounts here, higher than before, but the actual amount wasn't that high. So you can then see, is it number of items in orders that have driven that down? Or you can tell if it's quite low ticket items that are going to be driving down the amount of revenue that's coming in. But now we know that, is it bringing in profit? Because you might have brought in that amount of money, but if they're selling it at a loss, it's not going to be much of profit. And then what we can do is then go, okay, let's change that to profit. And then all that profit is where we had the profit column in the table, we're just summing it. So as you can see, because we did all the hard work in Power Query, we can just use really, really simple DAX to just get the information we want. So now we drop that in, we can have a look. So actually, there's a lot of profit, and it's profit all the way. But we can see there's cases where actually there has been here, this one person in September, they made £11 profit on whatever was being sold to them, then 7, and then -3, and then 5, and then -447. So overall, that particular customer in that particular time has actually cost the company money. And there's other cases where that's happened. It's happened there, but majority of cases, there's another one there. You got 5 customers, whatever one's appeared. Overall, that whole cohort of customers in that particular period of time when they bought, they ended up costing the company £538 or dollars in this case, of profit. And then what we can do is let's just add conditional formatting. Let's do it this way. So you can click on there and go in, and then we can do our low, mid and high, and then we remove don't format, and then we can look here, and then it will give us broken down. If we go back again, background color, this is not much use. What we want to do is actually do totals as well. And then because we've got totals, it's now giving us enter value, and actually anything less than 0 we want to be red, up to the point of orange being red. And then let's do 50,000 as the top end for green, but then obviously you won't be going green afterwards. And then we can see it broken down here. We can see all the ones where they lost profit and all the ones where they gained. So it's all gained profit in general, and you can see there's a lot, but there was a lot more sales then. But again, you can see that, oh yeah, it's great, got these 8 customers who purchased in there, but every time they purchased and everything like that ended up working out, you ended up not making any money from them. So actually, was it worth it? And that's another amazing thing that you can do with the cohort analysis, because it just gives you that information. Now, remember when I said that now you can look at when someone bought and then how much they're impacting of when they bought to the year when you are looking at for the particular sales. So an example would be, we have people who could have bought in 2014. How much of 2017 sales are made up of customers who purchased then? So how many customers purchased then are purchasing now? You could even do it actually with sales. You can do it with average transaction, but you can do it with profit as well. How much of that are actually driving your profit? So we've got profit at the moment. If we take out month short, because we don't need it, and then let's take out the months to repeat and order sequence, and then what we want to have up here is actually the dim date. We want the actual order date year. So if we come down to here, add in that, we now have across the top the order year and the year of first order. If we switch that around, we can see the amount of profit people who purchased in 2014. This is how much profit they made the company here, and then this year, and then that year, and then that year. And then you can see how the next one's done. And actually 2015 people ended up making more profit for the company in 2017, even though that isn't a full completed year. And the same goes for here as well. There's even higher. There's probably like larger items were being sold. The actual profit was increasing over time, but that's expected because then you have more customers coming in each time, as long as they're repeating. And as we could see, there was a lot of repeats. But because we can see that number, what we want to be able to do then is, if we take that and then let's do our cohort of customers. So if we remove profit, then if we just close dim date, come back and do our unique customers, we can now see the count. And then if we do show value as by column total, and the reason for doing that is, and then we can see the percentage of the customers who purchased in that particular period. Where did they come from? now, if we come down to cell elements, nope, sorry, wrong one. If we come down to specific column, we can now change the decimal place for that to 0. So then we can see it just as a pure percentage there. And then we can add in our conditional formatting. And let's add in middle color. Let's do that one, and then that one, and then that one. Oh yeah, forgot to take off the blanks. So if we go back in again, conditional formatting there, that's zeros, don't format, and then we got it. So yeah, you can see in 2014, obviously 100% of there. In 2015, people who first bought in 2014 made up 26% of the sales of, well, customers who repeat purchased. And then you've got the percentage of customers that ended up coming back again. So you can see the majority of the customers who kept purchasing and made up the most of the customers coming back was from 2014. And then if you wanted to have a look at it by row, you can just copy that one again. Then we can just click on this, go show value as, and then just do percentages row. And then we can see how many have repeated over that time. So generally, it's quite common to hit around this amount. So it's actually getting a very high amount of repeat. Very rare you would see something this high. But in this particular data set, this is how it looks. You won't get that high of return. But a lot of people won't repeat as much as you would expect them to. But what you want to be able to do is obviously look at what you've got and then use that knowledge to then be able to just slowly increase your percentage. So as long as you're bringing in new, you know, on average, if your repeat for the next year is this amount of percent, you know, if you bring in this amount of new, let's say if you had a repeat of just say 20% in year 2. So first year is always 100% because when I first bought. Second year, you only get 20% repeat. And then it drops down to 15% and then 10% and so on and so forth. If you know that, then you know whatever new you're going to get, you're generally going to get another 20% because it seems to be the norm. What you want to be able to do is then figure out how you can then make that 20% then become, I don't know, 22%. Just those little increases can then obviously boost your actual retention and have less churn of customers, leads and users. So now we know how the cohort works and everything like that. If you wanted to be able to look at, say, the year it was purchased, as you remember, when I clicked on it before, it was only giving you a weird look because of what happened with when the people bought, and obviously it's going to be the year based on the months, so the months would have been a year out, so that's why it looked weird. But because now we're using the actual order sequence in 2017, we know there weren't going to be any purchases then because the only people who purchased first in 2017 are 2017 people, and then you've got when they did their second purchase. So this is how much they made profit wise. So if we were to switch this back to our unique customers instead of profit, and then if we were to make that percentage again of row total, and you can see the majority is down there. But that's the thing. Now you can filter by the different years because what this one's doing is actually looking at the order year. So we can break this down. If we go 2016, then that was going to remove all the 2017 because it doesn't exist. And you can see how many when they repeated. So we know that of the people in 2016, this is how many they repeated up until that point. If we removed it, so we know up until 5 orders for those people there, that means we know in 2017 you had some people who actually did their second orders in that, but then there was the other ones that we saw and now added additional orders. So you can play around with it to actually look at different ones. You obviously can add other filters that they can then look at if you just want to just look at one particular first order year. If you wanted to look at, say, region, but I think the problem if you use the region, it would just limit it to that one, but then it will tell you the order where it sits, which I guess kind of would work. So let's drop that in. Let's have a look. Let's have a look what that will look like. Let's drop in region. So if we get rid of the year and let's do a region, let's do central. Yeah, so what it's telling you is the percentage that ordered in there. So of the ones that ordered those times, it's actually reduced it to the percentage that relates to the total. So you can see the numbers that make up that first order, second order, third order, fourth order. So yeah, so you can play around with it in different ways, but best thing to do is always just look at it with the pure data that you've got. Use your order sequence or your months to repeat, weeks to repeat, whichever one it is. Now what you can do is create multiple pages that can give you that view, or if you wanted to, you could actually just have 2 extra parameters that will work the magic for you, because instead of, say, if you've got a user, they're in here and they want to see months to repeat, they have to know to go to there, and then go down here and then do that, and you got your months to repeat. If you use a parameter, what you can do is drop it in there and then have a filter, and then we'll change it. And the same goes for the data in the middle here. Say you publish this it will then limit to this, unless you added extra ones under that, but it would look messy. For the user to be able to change it without having to go to different pages, they can then drop that in and then do different ones. The only thing is, I don't know if it will remember the percentage. It might, but let's give it a go and see what happens. So if you go up to modeling, and then under modeling, there's new parameter, click on that and then do fields. Under there, you can add in the different data that you want. So if we go into here and then we do that one, that one, that one, that one, and profit, there we go. And then we call this values. Oh, let's do parameter values, and then it says add slice to page. Don't do that, just do create. Now we have that down here, we can add it in to here, and then I'm going to replace this and then put that there, and then you can select the one you want. So now we're going ATV, average days, average number, profit, all there by using a parameter. And the only issue is you can't do the percentages. So what you could do is basically set one page to be your cohort view of the percentages, and then have this parameter view that would allow you people to actually change what the view of the data is, and also you can do one for the columns as well. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please give a like and subscribe. And if you're also interested in learning more about data and analytics, check out these videos over here where I show you how to do just that. And as always, until next time.